Hey guys, welcome to another episode of CERNER Hacks. In this episode, we're going to tackle the hospital course. There's a share field between multiple specialists, so we can collaborate to share information. So stay tuned and we'll talk about how we can make this work to our advantage. Hey guys, welcome to CERNER Hacks again. And in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the hospital course. So the hospital course is a pretty interesting field. It's the only field that is shared between colleagues. So if you work as a group of physicians, for example, in our case, I'm a hospitalist and I share this hospital course with all my other colleagues. So when we hand over patients, this is where we try to transfer as much information as we can. So not only is there this box common between doctors, but it's also common between fields. So if you go into the rounding section, so I've typed up something here in the hospital course here in the rounding section, and when you go into the discharge part of the hospital tabs, you'll notice that it's automatically ported in here as well. So when I'm doing my discharge summary, it should be quite simple. If everyone's done a good job of collaborating to make a good discharge summary in the hospital course, all you do is go into discharge summary, and what should happen is that hospital course will be pulled in. So if we go down to here, you'll see that the hospital's now course is now pulled into the dictation for your discharge summary. So that's why there's a really good advantage of keeping a good record of what happened in the hospital. We'll start from the beginning of here. So I just wanted to show you the reason why it's an important box. So between our hospital service, there's some pretty big debates about what should belong in there and how we should convey that information. These are things that I found that are ideal, and between you and your group, you'll have to decide what's important for your group as well. So in our group, we generally want to have background information about why that patient is in here, who they are, and what type of setting they came from. So in this case, it's a 67-year-old retired female RN who lives in her multi-level home, baseline sinuses with IADLs, no cognitive issues. She uses a walker, and there's a contact, James, the grandson, who's this phone number here. So this quickly tells us who the patient is. They were admitted on March 9, 2019 after a mechanical fall in the left femur fracture. Again, this is a very quick, dirty way of telling us what the patient came in for. And then a quick past medical history. It doesn't have to be very long, just a brief past medical history. And then most importantly, the actual course. So they were recently admitted in January with a GI bleed on apixaban. They were treated conservatively. Upper endoscopy on January 12th that was negative, and they had a planned outpatient colonoscope. She came back in with the femur fracture on March 9th, and there was delay in the apixaban. It was done by Dr. Smith and was placed not weight bearing until April 26th. So this gives us a quick understanding of what happened. Just one complication of a post-op superficial left calf thrombosis off the apixaban due to upper GI bleed, and then resumed. Dr. Smith will review again 4 weeks post-op on April 13th. So these are all very specific dates so that nobody forgets on handover when these things are to occur. And of course, if something's occurred, that gets updated with the next hospitalist who's taking care of the patient. And anything that's an active issue that becomes a non-active issue, for example, if somebody gets a urinary tract infection while in the hospital, it gets treated, we would enter it in here as well, so it's not forgotten. So even though it's an item that no longer an active issue, we would put it in the hospital course so it doesn't get lost. In this case, she had a slow AFib at admission. She got some digoxin. Diltiazem was continued afterwards. She had post-op pneumonia, started some antibiotics, and tells us when the antibiotics were completed. And then there's a chest x-ray report that suggests a repeat chest x-ray in 6 weeks to ensure clearance, and that's on April 28th. So again, if you're that last physician taking care of the patient and the patient's discharged before April 28th, it'll just remind you to let the next physician or family doctor to review that, so those things aren't missed. So it's very important to communicate this information to the next physician and at discharge. And then of course, every time there's a change or to dates, or if there's new things that happen, these things get added. If it's still a relevant issue, then we would keep them as active issues. So you would keep on active issues. I generally don't like to have a lot of active issues. So anything that's that's cleared, I usually will put into the hospital course and delete the active issue because it's not an active issue anymore, but it's still not lost in the system because it'll be described in the body of the course. So hopefully that makes some sense. I also put in here some housekeeping items. Their code status would be here, their DVT prophylaxis while in hospital, and then more recently we've been putting COVID vaccination status or whether or not they were swabbed at admission because that's fairly relevant. So hopefully that helps you guys collaborate a little bit with your group and see what's important. These are things that we felt that were helpful in our groups. Some of us still use a very didactic type hospital course, but in general are just making sure that information gets transferred to the family doctor in the most efficient way. Okay, so hopefully that helps with the hospital course, and we'll see you next time.